Hello everyone, Alex the Rats here, and today I'm gonna take you back to 2011. Specifically the day I went out and picked up a little game called Duke Nukem Forever, which I ended up actually liking a fair bit, aside from some problematic stuff. But generally speaking, I was, and still am, pretty fond of Duke Nukem Forever. Of course, Duke Nukem Forever isn't really the game I'm gonna talk about, but it is very much tied to it. You see, Duke Nukem Forever went through a lot of changes during its lengthy development, and one of those changes was cutting a character known as Bombshell.
In many ways, Duke Nukem Forever was a bit of a swan song for old-school shooters. Not only did it completely kill off the Duke Nukem franchise aside from some cameos here and there, it also sort of was the last of its kind. For a while anyway. It wasn't that long before we experienced a bit of a retro shooter renaissance, and it all started with 2013's Rise of the Triad. Now, Rise of the Triad 2013 isn't very good. It's extremely janky. To this day it remains incredibly unoptimized and struggles with performance issues even on really high-end computers. But it was the first game developed by Slipgate Ironworks, then known as Interceptor Entertainment. And here's the interesting part. They became the new owners of the 3D Realms brand. Yes, 3D Realms. And while you may see the name still going around these days, 3D Realms nowadays is actually its own company, completely separate from Apogee, which also is still around and publishing games. It's a little bit confusing, but essentially the people who own Slipgate Ironworks also ended up getting the 3D Realms brand, making it a separate company. And one of the first games they announced in development was an actual Duke Nukem game, except it wasn't. You see, the Duke Nukem IP actually belongs to Gearbox, who were not keen on 3D Realms publishing a new Duke game. So if they couldn't use Duke Nukem, why not use the character that ended up being cut from Duke Nukem Forever? Enter Bombshell, released in 2016. It's not a very good game either. In fact, I would argue it misses the mark even more than Rise of the Triad 2013. But it helped expand a lot on Bombshell as the character, giving her a full name of Shelly Harrison and giving her a new backstory. Portrayed as a badass female heroine, Bombshell uses her robot arm and an arsenal of weapons to defeat hordes of enemies. I won't go into too much detail about Bombshell, as I believe that's better suited for its own review, but Bombshell and Rise of the Triad would both be indicators of the kind of quality one could expect from Slipgate Ironworks. Which is that they clearly have a passion, clearly want to make really cool games, but their games tend to be a bit of a mess.
One major exception to this rule has been Ion Fury, which was announced originally simply as the FPS prequel to Bombshell. Developed by Voidpoint, Ion Fury uses the build engine, which also powered this. The original Duke Nukem 3D. Ion Fury is the game that truly brings out everything the Bombshell franchise is about, which is having Shelly acting as a bit of a spiritual successor to Duke Nukem. It's a really good game, and yeah. As you can see, I had a bit of an obsession with it, as I own not just one, but two big box releases of it. I also own the Switch port, and yeah, it's one of my favorite games. So that brings us finally to the game I'm talking about today, which is Phantom Fury. It's a bit of a sequel to Ion Fury, although it's marketed more as a spin-off. Which leads me to believe we might get more games in the Ion Fury series, which I really hope is the case, as Voidpoint absolutely killed it with Ion Fury and its expansion Aftershock. Anyway, like I said, Ion Fury is not the game we're talking about today. So let's get to it. Let's talk about Phantom Fury.
As stated, Phantom Fury takes place after Ion Fury, with Shelly now having lost her arm in an accident that left her entire squad dead. Equipped with a new bionic arm, Shelly is now more powerful than before, but also facing an even more dangerous mission. The GDF have turned against humanity, and it is up to Shelly to stop their dangerous experiments before the world goes to hell. Phantom Fury takes itself a bit more seriously than Ion Fury, but I feel it handles the balance between serious moments and humor much better than Bombshell did. It still has a bit of a B-movie vibe to it, but it relies much less on pop culture references, and the story revolves more around Shelly's character and feels a lot more personal. So I think the writing is much more solid here, with some really great dialogue moments and some moments in the game that kinda brought back the vibe of games like Max Payne, honestly having me a little teared up, which I didn't expect at all. Like Iron Fury, Phantom's Fury story is mostly told through cutscenes and dialogue during gameplay, though you can read emails and logs on computer terminals throughout the game that kinda add to it. The computer terminals also contain stuff like door lock codes, so the game has a bit of a Deus Ex vibe to it. In fact, I would say there's a strong immersive sim influence in general, with how much stuff is interactive for no good reason, and now you can pick up crates and such and use them to get places you perhaps were not meant to reach. But at the core, Phantom Fury remains a shooter, and where Iron Fury firmly fell within the mid-90s category of boomer shooters like Duke Nukem 3D, Blood and Shadow Warrior, Phantom Fury feels a lot more inspired by late 90s and early 2000s era shooters like Half-Life, Deus Ex and very prominently Sin, for reasons I will get to in a bit. It carries over a lot of Half-Life's gameplay tropes, most notably its heavy reliance on the physics engine, which doesn't always work the way you'd expect it to. And of course, you have to specifically press use on ladders to use them. And yeah, it brings back crouch jumping. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it's something I kinda do instinctively the more I play it, so it's not that bad. Although there's a lot of bad stuff to talk about, but I will get to that later. What I think Phantom Fury does really well is the combat loop. It has a certain flow to it and gives you a ton of tactical opportunities. Whether it is shooting community placed barrels or using the enemy drones as makeshift explosives, the combat has a very unique vibe to it. It helps that Shelly can now slide if you crouch while sprinting, and in general I love how smooth the movement feels. The combat loop is definitely what helps carry the game, with each enemy feeling somewhat distinct and requiring different tactics, giving each combat scenario a feeling of being a puzzle you have to solve. In that sense, it borrows quite heavily from more modern shooters like Doom Eternal, which isn't a bad thing at all, and I think it shows that the team put a lot of thought into their enemy designs and the role each enemy has for each encounter. In fact, while a lot of modern games kinda struggle with some enemies just feeling like reskins of other ones, Phantom Fury does a good job giving each enemy a distinct role. I especially love the enemy variety, as you have everything from generic soldier types to mutant zombies, as well as its brain enemies that look like they come right out of an old 50s horror movie. There is a pretty classic 90s shooter vibe to the enemy designs, and I would say that killing them all feels really satisfying. And that is of course thanks to the arsenal at your disposal. Most of the weapons from Iron Fury make the return here, including the stun baton, aka the Electrofryer. It retains the same attacks from Iron Fury and can also be used interactively as a means to power certain things in the environment. Much like Half-Life, weapons are now divided into categories. In the pistol category, we have, well, the pistol, which can be upgraded with rapid fire and a taser. It's mostly useful for weaker enemies, as well as for opening crates if you don't feel like switching to the stun button to do so. But for early game it works well enough. Getting headshots with it feels pretty satisfying at least. The Lover Boy makes a return, and I would say it's even more of a workhorse weapon in this game than it was in Iron Fury. Due to its ability to lock onto enemies and easily one-shot most of them, it is amazing for getting rid of enemies quickly. I would say I could count on one hand the amount of times I blind fired it, because the lock-on ability really makes the regular firing mode a bit redundant.
What's the matter, John? Hardcore making you go soft?
Haha, certainly softer than proprietary alloys. That's for sure. Thanks for holding them off.
In the latter parts of the game, you also get Blade's Magnum from Sin, which is given to you in a cameo that honestly made me fangasm a bit when I first saw it in the early trailers. Sin has always been one of my favorite shooters, and while this is obviously a bit of a tie-in with the Sin remaster that unfortunately seems to have been put on ice for now, I honestly don't mind at all that Bombshell now canonically takes place in the same universe as Sin, or at least in my head it does. I didn't expect this boomer shooter multiverse to exist, but here we are. Anyway, the Magnum is ridiculously powerful and can easily one-shot most enemies. It's a bit sad it's reserved only for the very end of the game, as I would have loved to use it sooner. But for what it's worth, I think they did the weapon justice, and it feels even more fun to use than in the game it's from. And we have two shotguns to choose from. The standard shotgun is pretty beefy as it is, and can easily dispatch most weaker enemies. I use it mostly for the mutants and early game as a workhorse weapon. It can be upgraded with a flash that stuns enemies temporarily, which is extremely useful.
Oh, you are one gorgeous mother flacker.
It soon gets upgraded by the game's super shotgun, the Mother Flacker. It needs to reload after each shot, but in return fires 3 shells at once and packs a massive punch for a shotgun. Great for crowd control, and even for some bosses it can chip away quite a chunk of their health.
Time to make it rain.
The rifle category contains the Penetrator, which again can be upgraded for dual wielding. It can deal a lot of damage quickly, as well as set enemies on fire, making it pretty suitable for crowd control, as well as dealing with smaller enemies efficiently. We also have an assault rifle, which can be upgraded with a nitrogen grenade launcher that deals freezing damage to enemies. There's also the Iron Bow, making a triumphant return as this game's sniper rifle. It retains the same functionality as in Iron Fury, except now the secondary fire acts as a zoom, and the primary attack works more like the secondary in Iron Fury. The fourth weapon in the category is the Photon Repeater, which can be upgraded into a straight up railgun. I didn't end up using it as much as I thought I would, but it is fun to use, as its damage output one-shots most enemies. The fifth category contains the most fun weapons of the game, the explosives. It should come as no surprise that bowling bombs make their iconic return here. Being pretty much one of the most iconic weapons in their arsenal, they function pretty much identically to Iron Fury and can now be upgraded even further for more damage.
Two can play at this game, bitch.
The Micro Stinger acts as this game's rocket launcher, mostly useful for dealing with turrets and some boss enemies like the helicopter. The secondary fire is able to fire 3 rockets rapidly, and I end up using that firing mod almost more than the primary due to the damage output. The plasma cannon isn't really an explosive weapon, but acts more as a heavy plasma weapon. It fires balls of plasma that can be upgraded to stick to their victims. It can deal quite a lot of damage to heavier enemies. In the sixth category, we have the heavy weapons. The foam modulator spreads electrified foam in front of you, which can be good for trapping enemies and dealing a lot of damage to anyone who steps into the area. The bile spitter is capable of shooting out a ball of corrosive bile that seeks out enemies around it and starts chipping away at their health. And finally there's the Sacking Giant's head, which you obtain after defeating the Sacking Giants. It's pretty much this game's gravity gun, and I completely forgot about it after picking it up, so yeah, I don't have any footage of me using it, unfortunately. Of course, as I mentioned, all of these weapons can be upgraded using nanite cores that you pick up in the game. Hidden in hard to reach places, they're one of the biggest reasons to explore in the game, as you're often rewarded for looking off the path. In addition to weapon upgrades, you can also upgrade your bionic arm with additional functionality, such as a magnetic shield that protects you from enemy bullets, or being able to force open locked doors with your bare hands. Although the latter is only used maybe a couple of times during the entire game, it counts more as a story progression MacGuffin more than actual upgrades. In fact, your upgrades are divided into 3 tiers that get unlocked as you progress through the game. Each tier provides options on how you want to build Shelly, so it really is up to you and your playstyle what upgrades you want to prioritize. During the game you also get the Ion Suit, which provides an additional upgrade tree. Here you can get upgrades that further enhance the gameplay, such as being able to break things by sliding into them, or giving pickups a chance to give you twice the amount of health or armor they usually give. Now, I want to mention that I was unfortunately unable to get most of the upgrades due to a pretty serious bug that happened at this point in the game. After getting out of this underwater section, I noticed my magnetic shield was gone and yeah, all my upgrades got reset to 0. At least my suit and bionic arm. My weapons remained unaffected. So yeah, that more or less forced me to play the rest of the game with a massive debuff, which was clearly scaled for a more upgraded Shelly. It made me feel a bit like a glass cannon in the sense I was basically playing at level 0 but with upgraded weapons. As far as I know, this will be fixed in the next patch, as several people reported the same bug. Apparently dying at any point during the underwater section causes it, which is a bit of a massive oversight to say the least. And that brings me to what is obviously the biggest flaw about Phantom Fury. It doesn't feel like a finished game. It was very obviously rushed out without sufficient testing for whatever reason. Now, I do know that 3D Realms suffered massive layoffs lately, and that no doubt contributed to a very hectic development. It might be a miracle a game like this engraved and even released, even if it's in a very rough state. I played the game since the pre-release beta, and while I have seen some gradual fixes, especially with patch number 1, it doesn't change the fact that the game launched in a state it really shouldn't have. While I didn't encounter any softlogs or game progression glitches, I would more describe my experience as very uneven. Nothing tops the Chicago level though. My Iron Bow zoom would randomly just stop working, and a lot of the map's lighting and texturing looks weird. And I'm not talking outside the map boundary or in places you aren't supposed to reach. No, I'm talking if you just wander off for a bit, you will see parts of the map that just look wrong. Like, did Shelly just end up in the back rooms or something? And I do want to admit, a lot of my playtime was spent going around in circles and trying to find out where to go next. The game doesn't do the best job at communicating to the player what their next objective is. I was even left wondering how to even complete some objectives, such as this level where I don't think I ever figured out how to actually save the scientists. I think some replays might be needed to get all the mission objectives done. It is a common criticism of the game from what I've known so far, and one I very much agree with. And while I'm fairly good at games that aren't hand-holding, Phantom Fury can expect a little too much from the player at times. I'm all for making games that are old school and don't straight up tell you where to go or what to do, but a little better communication would be nice. That being said, it didn't happen often during my playthrough. I also want to mention that while my computer might not be the most powerful, in fact I know it isn't, and I definitely need an upgrade very soon, I did get mostly decent performance, but the game definitely chugs in places for me for no obvious reason. Again, it might just be my hardware not being up to snuff, but it is fascinating how uneven the performance gets without any clear indication of what causes it. There were of course also missing sound effects, or sound effects that made no sense, such as this car revving noise that would randomly play in places. I assume it is meant as a background sound effect for the city, but it's so pronounced and catches your attention that I instantly thought it was significant, when it's really just nothing. But what sound effects are there are pretty great. All the weapon sounds are really good, in particular I love the subsonic boom of the bowling bombs, and the satisfying blast of the shotgun and mother flakker. The Loverboy also sounds as great as ever here, and even the basic pistol manages to sound very pistol-like, without sounding badly so, which is easy to do. And of course, Blade's Magnum sounds absolutely brutal, with each shot feeling like you're firing pure death at your enemies. I also would be remiss to mention the stellar voice acting. Valerie Aron returns as Shelly, and as usual does an amazing job. Her voice is definitely synonymous with the character by now, and I really wouldn't want anyone else doing the job. She is able to bring emotion when needed, and can bring a fair amount of seriousness to a character who of course on the surface can be seen as just a female Duke Nukem. But she is definitely much more than that, and she brings that point home very well.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Pizza night is saved.
You're lucky you're handsome.
You'd still love me even if I managed to burn water. Hey, you want to put on some tunes?
Yeah, sure thing.
Eric Mills also returns to Lenny's original voice for Blade for the brief cameo I mentioned, and just hearing his voice again is surreal. I know the Sin remaster might not happen, but I really hope it does, because he is truly underrated as a voice actor. The rest of the cast does a really good job in the voice acting department too, especially the NPCs, which all lend a fairly over-the-top performance that really fits the game's tone. Like, overall I think the voice acting in general is one of the most solid things about the game. I also really want to mention the music by Alex Kmiek. I really hope I am pronouncing it correctly. Anyway, his music really fits the game perfectly and helps reinforce the action movie vibe of the game. And while none of it quite reaches being as memorable or catchy as the tracker tunes in Iron Fury, it very much helps give Phantom Fury its identity, and I love the ending theme in particular. And at least the game is pretty good looking for the most part. Being on the Unreal Engine, it has some absolutely gorgeous lighting effects in places. And despite the retro pixelated look, some environments look absolutely stunning. I actually really like the look of the game, and even with all the comparisons to Half-Life, more than anything it feels like a straight up spiritual remake of Duke Nukem Forever. Except it manages to do something that Duke Nukem Forever never even came close to accomplishing, which is perfectly blending humor and seriousness. Shelly in the end is much more of a tragic character. She has real trauma, and the game drops a lot of hints that she may not have overcome it. But it is something that deeply motivates her. Even with all of its flaws, Phantom Fury at its core is a game I love. It does so many things that I enjoy, from the awesome arsenal to the distinct enemies and levels. In particular, I want to mention that each level of the game feels unique in some way, or has some gimmick that gives it an identity. One level, you're going through a desert, then you're exploring an old facility overrun with mutants, and you're even flying an attack helicopter at some points. Phantom Fury's levels are like episodes of a really good TV show, and set pieces that each feel memorable and distinct. And even as bad as the Chicago City level is, I can easily remember it, and easily remember how it looked. A lot of old school shooters these days end up feeling a bit samey after a while, so it is refreshing seeing a game that tries to mix things up more. In fact, that's one of the things I loved about Duke Nukem Forever, and even one of the things I enjoyed about Call of Duty's campaigns. And that's the main reason I truly wish for Phantom Fury to continue being worked on and supported, because what's here isn't finished, feels very rough and rushed out, and should not have been released in this state, but screw it, I would lie if I said I don't love the ever-loving crap out of it. But yeah, it is heavily flawed. I really wish there was a manual save option as well, as replaying big chunks of the levels over and over isn't very fun. And a lot of it really needs more polish and work before I would even call it worth buying. But if you're like me and willing to look past the flaws, then you might find yourself enjoying it more than you expected to.
Now, I'm gonna go off script here for a bit, because there's something I want to discuss, and that is 3D Realms itself. I know 3D Realms nowadays is not the same 3D Realms as back in the day. Like I mentioned, they have new owners, and they are making new games, and forging their new identity and all that. But, let's be real, when people think about 3D Realms, this is what immediately comes up. Duke Nukem 3D. And a whole bunch of other games, you know, like Terminal Velocity, Max Payne, Prey, and I think 3D Realms has a certain legacy to live up to here. And even if they didn't work on those games, even if, you know, they're not the same company, they own the name and they have a certain responsibility to, you know, make that name mean something. And I've seen, you know, Bombshell, Graven, and now Phantom Fury release in a state that they really shouldn't have released in. And it's so frustrating and so disappointing to see time and time again that they have games with good ideas and really cool concepts that just don't live up to, you know, what they should be. Like, we're still waiting for a patch for Bombshell, for instance, you know. We're probably never gonna get that, so yeah. I really hope 3D Realms will continue working on Phantom Fury, and I really hope that in the future they will reconsider how they launch games and how development goes. I don't know, I think it's a management issue, but I don't know enough about the situation to really make any kind of anything but speculation here.
Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to leave a like below if you liked the video, and make sure to subscribe and ring that bell if you want to be notified whenever I upload new stuff or whenever I live stream, which happens every Friday. So yeah. Also, if you want to support me on PayPal, you can do so via the link in the description. I take donations, and any amount is fine. If you want to support me, that's how you can do it. And as always, I will see you next time, so take care.